Welcome to the CFS Mental Wellness Podcast. I'm the host, Sophia Seeley. I am a licensed professional counselor and founder of Connected Family Services in Pennsylvania. Today, we will be meeting with Melissa Moya-Brinkman, who is a licensed professional counselor and is also a first-generation American millennial. And we will be discussing how to provide culturally competent care for first-generation Americans, Gen Z, and millennials. First, to jump right in, right? Could you define who is a part of the first gen millennial group? Like what would it be? Like what would be the descriptors? How would someone know that they are a part of that group? Or other people know that they're a part of this group?
Yeah. It's funny because just recently they've been niching down the definition of millennial, and now people that were born in like 1980 to like 1984,
Mm-hmm.
they're called geriatric millennials. And then I think from like
Oh, wow.
85 to like 2000 something, or like maybe like 85 to like 1990 something is like millennials. And then afterwards, I think then it becomes Gen Z. So I describe even like the high school and the college kids, to me, those are Gen Z, like the ones that are 19, 20, 21, like right now.
Okay. All right. Because I'm always confused because I didn't know that we were considered millennials. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, we're totally millennial. We're like a few, at least for me, because I was born in 89. So I feel like we're a few years away from like the geriatric millennials.
I know when you said that, I was like, what? I'm like, this is all, it's so, I was like, I didn't even know that they were like breaking it down into those smaller groups. But I do believe that, which is a whole other conversation. Sometimes I get off topic, but I do believe that the way people are in different generations is definitely changing, like in the workforce, in therapy, it's all kind of needing different approaches. And so, for yourself, are there any psychological differences that you've seen, like in your specialty population? I should reframe that. Any like
Yeah.
particular psychological concerns or diagnoses that are more prevalent in that group than people that are not in that group?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything like that stands out as far as like diagnoses or concerns necessarily, but because they are so much more glued to the phone, like for sure
Mm,
social media plays a huge impact. And I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Because I get a lot of clients that see their friends posting their best life online,
mm,
and then their serotonin levels start to drop because they start to compare, like, oh, so and so's on vacation and so's doing this and I'm stuck at home. And so there's that aspect of social media which is super prevalent for like the millennial Gen Z group. But then here's the plus side, is that they go on TikTok and they see a million videos about mental health and little things to do, and it like normalizes it. And sometimes my clients will be scrolling on the comments and they'll be like, oh my God, I saw this other girl write this comment. And I was like, oh, me too. I'm not crazy. I feel that same way too. So there is that like double edged aspect to like social media being so popular with these two groups
mm.
versus probably like clients that I've had. I don't see that many older clients, but before I used to, and that was not a factor for them. But for sure, for my younger clients, social media is a huge factor, and I can see the pros and the cons of them being so glued to the phone. But as far as like diagnoses and things like that, I don't see any pattern necessarily with those groups.
Okay, I love what you said because I feel like with a lot of people that I'm working with, especially like during this pandemic, there's been an increase of people not being able to focus. And I feel like
Mhm.
with TikTok, everything is really short. So, which is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do like the fact that they're trying to put like educational material out there as well as like mental health. So then it's in these short segments where people can get it and not feel like overwhelmed, where they're gonna, I think you got like 5 seconds to catch somebody's attention. And so I like that you pointed that out about the good and bad parts of it. But That's kind of like the part of it that I'm seeing with that. So, with just kind of like from a cultural standpoint, when you look at the intergenerational patterns, like at home, are there any cultural differences that are contributing to mental health concerns for that particular population? The
Oh,
gen-
yeah.
first generation Americans and Gen Z.
Oh, definitely. Like, I think that a lot of the clients that I work with that are children of immigrants have like a different, like a very unique challenge in the sense that a lot of them interpret for their parents. If they don't have, or if their parents are undocumented, they have that constant fear and worry about, like, if my parents get pulled over, could they get deported? And then there are like family functions too that impact them. So, for example, sometimes I have kids that are seniors in high school and they're getting ready to go to school, but going away for college might not be feasible for them for different reasons. Some
Right.
cultures, like especially like the Latinx culture, if you're a girl, it's expected that you go from your parents' home to your husband's home. There's no dorm, there's no party rock at a frat house, there's none of that. It's just from your home to your husband's home. So if they want to go away for school, there's that. Like if you're a girl, your parents are immigrants, that's not the norm. But you're in America now, where that is kind of a more like acceptable norm. There's that culture clash amongst the family with the different generations because the parents are going to have one set of expectations and you're going to have dreams and desires that clash with what your parents are expecting from you. Also, in like a lot of these immigrant households, the parents work like various jobs to try to like hold down the family financially. So sometimes like the older siblings become responsible for the younger siblings or even for like grandparents. So that example of going away for school becomes limited because you probably help the family by cooking and cleaning and babysitting your siblings or helping like bathe your grandma and things like that. So those are some of like the unique challenges that the first generation American clients that I work with face. It's like documentation, like citizenship, and the constant fear of parents being deported, which I think has been a little bit alleviated since Biden entered. It's not as big a deal as when Trump was in office, but it's still there for sure. And expectations, like what they want out of life and what their parents are expecting, and then like the responsibilities that they have, like translation or watching out for their siblings and things like that.
Wow. So this is similar topic, but kind of like leading off of that, if someone comes into therapy and they're saying that all these things are bothering them, and then the therapist who may not be like culturally aware says like, well, just leave your family, and not leave your family, but like go off, do college,
Mhm.
and that's totally going against their cultural norm. Is that culturally insensitive? Is that kind of the appropriate approach because of like the life that they're living here? Or is it more appropriate to kind of encourage them to stay with their family and find alternative ways of going to college? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's totally a tough one because even though like I'm first generation American, Latina, my parents are from Cuba, like all of the things, I was what we call like rebellious, but I've reframed it as trailblazing. And I had to go away for school and all of the things. And even though my parents were upset, I don't regret it. It was something that I felt like I had to do. So sometimes I have to check my own bias when I'm in sessions with fellow first generation American people, because, yeah, like I always encourage clinicians, even if you are working with a culture that you're familiar with or that you're not, pass the ball back to them
Mm,
and kind of ask, like, what would the best case scenario be? What would happen if you decide to go away for school and your mom gets mad and doesn't talk to you? Then what? Or what if you decide to stay to help out the family? Okay, how do you cope with that? I guess maybe exploring both with the client and passing the ball back to the client so that they can stay in their power, like whatever decisions that they make. Because I totally struggle with that. Because if I could like advocate for everybody to like adventure and go do your thing, I totally would. But I know that for some people, like it's super scary to go against your family and it might not even be an option for them.
I love that you said that because it made me think about the like that's the American culture coming from me, right? Saying, you know, like if this person, it's kind of automatically jumping towards this American lifestyle of if you want to be successful, you got to go to college and things like that. But we've seen in recent years, well, we've seen it's probably been known for a long time that that's not the only route towards success. But for me, it's coming out of that mindset and putting it back on the person so that they can truly explore what it is that they do really want and what'll make them happy in the long run. That's kind of like what I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing. Put it back on the client to, and not to bring the therapist to not bring their own biases into the session as much as they can, kind of factor that out in a sense. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's really
Yeah, because
helpful.
I get that all the time. Like, I'll get girls that are like, 19, 20, maybe they finished community college and now they want to adventure and transfer to a bigger university somewhere else. And I'll share with them, I'll be like, I know what it's like for sure to do this. And okay, so let's explore either way that you go. What would that mean for you?
Right. And so because family is important, so then it's like if you do choose this, how do you still maintain a positive relationship with your family? Because it sounds like it's possible. It's just going to probably be like a difficult little area to
Yeah,
navigate.
definitely. Like the more traditional the family, and especially if you're like a woman and your parents are immigrants, I expect that, yeah, like it's probably going to be tougher. And then is is the goal to go away for school, for example, is it worth having a dip in your relationship with your parents? Like, and also maybe exploring like the family dynamic. Is it a family that traditionally has tears and then can repair easily? Like, explore different with that.
With working with the Gen Z population, did they transfer well into the telehealth model, or was it still like a difficult?
Yeah, as far as chatting with me, it seems like that went pretty smoothly. And I think maybe because they are used to FaceTime their friends and like that and Snapchat, I feel like for therapy that they have a much harder time using this mode for school.
Mm,
Like that was the difficult trend, learning online. Well, I was surprised because they're so plugged in that I expected that school would be just as easy as therapy. But no, it turns out that they actually like learning like in an old school within the four walls style.
right. I think there's so many distractions at home. So that part was, I think, difficult no matter what generation I'm sure they were in. Only people I saw that did well with the transition were people who were already working from home. Most people who were like so used to doing school, because education from such a young age is colonized, right? I'll say it is that way as well. But it's like we get so used to sitting in a chair, being there, and doing the whole 6.5 hours or however long they're in school, or 8 hours if people are at work, that once it's at home and everything is at home, sleep, entertainment, everything's at home, and now work, I think it was extremely overwhelming for people to separate it all. So, but
Yeah.
therapy for an hour was okay, but like school for 6 or 8 hours was not okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That was the difference for sure. Cause like with me, I feel like maybe it feels like FaceTime, like when they FaceTime with other people, that was normalized, but not school, definitely.
Okay. How about, so I started to talk about school, and that's more of a community factor for the populations that you were working with? Are there any external factors to be aware of that might contribute to the person's mental health, like when they're coming in for counseling, that you were made aware of?
Mhm. Yeah, like anybody that I work with who goes to a predominantly white school, especially when some of the schools started to open back up, like those challenges that they face comparing themselves to like their white classmates. Um, right now, there's like a huge issue happening in Colombia. So a lot of my clients whose families are still in Colombia, they're suffering a lot. And like some of their colleges and universities don't have a lot of like resources for Spanish speaking students. So there are various challenges that my clients face that are community based, either feeling kind of isolated because they might be the only person that looks like them in a classroom and they might feel a little bit disconnected from classmates or teachers, or like language barriers to resources. That's another big challenge that they face. If they're in a neighborhood, like during the election for sure, like my clients that were in like big like Trump neighborhoods, that was really difficult and triggering for them. So there's like various community based challenges.
Yeah. Was there like outright like racist things being done towards them, like in those communities?
um yeah, definitely, like in the school bus I had some kids that like I guess other classmates would scream like build a wall to them, and like, or I'm gonna call ICE, like
Oh,
little things like that. Hmm.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's
Yeah, like
breaking.
very disrespectful stuff.
Yeah, because and it goes
Hmm.
into this
Hmm.
feeling of being safe. So when I'm going to school and I'm going to work, like I want to feel like I can be safe. And I think, not I think, but that goes into a person not feeling safe, like they're not at home when they are at home, and this is their community, and it's people telling them that they don't belong. And that I would
Yeah.
imagine is pretty like anxiety provoking, and just I would even say like some people might, from what you're saying, might have like some symptoms that are similar to PTSD. I would imagine having to like live in those neighborhoods and not being sure of like what's going to happen. And so that I think that's really important for people on our side to be mindful of coming in, that things like that are happening.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you never know, right? Like it's scary. And I like what you said, like at the root of it, it's this message of like you don't belong. We support somebody who wants you and your family out of here. And then it goes a little bit deeper to like feeling like the children of immigrants, their parents. I've had a lot of clients whose parents work like in pumpkin patch fields and things like that, like that they don't bring value. And it's like fundamental, like you don't have value, we don't want you here, get out of here.
That is so heartbreaking. How can so for so right now I'm educating myself, so I know that's like one of the answers, right? How can clinicians do more to help the individuals of those populations that may one not even feel comfortable reaching out for help? How can we make it that even coming into counseling is a safe space? Or do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, like a lot of this is not taught in our textbooks. Like our textbooks go but so far. I find that the Gen Zs, the millennials, the people of color that I work with, they really like authenticity. Bring your authentic self to the table. Keep it real. Of course, keep it professional, but also keep it real and like normalize a lot of what they say and experience, because these are people that are already scared to come into therapy to begin with. It's definitely not normalized in their cultures. At home, forget about it. It's like super stigmatized. So I feel like it's our duty to make a safe environment, very welcoming, very warm, where we normalize. And what I have found is that when they do come to therapy, they're already kind of like second guessing themselves and judging the things that they share. They'll start a sentence with, this is going to sound crazy, or this is really problematic, but like they share something and it's like, that's actually like not uncommon what you're sharing. Normalize it versus pathologize it. And that's become like my whole mantra working with my clients, is that I want to bring the humanity to what they're sharing with us versus just pathologizing, being like, oh, that's a problem, you have this and that. No, like normalizing their experience, because a lot of what they're sharing, of course you're going to feel that way, of course you're going to react that way, like it makes total sense. So I guess like that would be my advice. And definitely I love what you said, like always educating yourself, always learning, because we don't know it all. Like there's no way, it's impossible.
Yes. And you touched on something really important. Well, you're going into something really important, because I think that's a part of the problem with insurance. But it's like so difficult, because to come in for counseling with an insurance-based practice, a person has to have a diagnosis. So the therapists that do accept insurance, like myself, we have to have that mindset of like, how can I put this in a diagnosis? Because it's like we have to identify something being abnormal, but it's like, what can we really classify as abnormal? Like, so what is normal? That's, it's saying something is normal when I think to be abnormal is normal. So it's a lot. It can probably go in circles, but I think there is a whole other conversation that can happen there that might be impacting individuals even coming in for help in the first place, of not wanting to be labeled. And I like what you said about going beyond that, right? So it's like, for some people, that's the way that they are going to be able to afford therapy, is by going through their insurance. I think like from the therapist side, also just looking beyond that. So, okay, we did that. We kind of like identify what the core thing is, but then let's look beyond that and see how we can best help this person feel comfortable in their skin, especially if they're living in an environment that is not welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm gathering. That's kind of where my mind is going from what you said. So that's really good information. So education for the from the clinical side, from the therapist side, educating themselves, normalizing things, and making it that the person coming in can feel comfortable speaking
Mm-hmm.
about whatever it is, and they don't have to feel like this person's gonna look at me like something's wrong with me. But that they're coming.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think if you're working with somebody of a different culture, or there are things that you don't know, you practice that like cultural humility and
Mm,
being humble and being like, oh, I don't know what that means. Because I think sometimes too, as clinicians, we have this pressure to be like a know-it-all about like all of the things. And I feel like that's totally impossible. And I think that if anything, it helps to like alleviate some of like the power dynamics too in
mhm.
like the therapeutic relationship. And you can kind of admit like, oh, I've never heard of that, what does that mean? Or like just asking those questions and admitting like, oh, I don't know what that is, can you explain to me, I want to learn more.
Right, yeah. So I wanted to ask you, from the individual side coming into see a counselor, so there's a couple things, because right now I know that it is really difficult to find counselors that are still accepting new clients. Uh, for people that are still seeking help, maybe they haven't found a therapist, but they feel like they want someone to talk to about things. What are some
Mhm.
questions that they can ask before going into counseling to make sure that the person will be like, even if the person is not of the same culture, that that person can provide like a safe space for them?
Yeah, I mean, I have had people, they'll call me and they'll be like, did you vote for Trump? Just like straight up. They'll
Okay.
be very direct. They want to know what I'm about, like, what's up with you? Where do you stand on certain things? And I get it, because I think that sometimes, like, our political views are a little bit deep and they can be indicators of like values and
Mm,
things that we have. So I get why people just cut to the chase and ask me certain things. It really depends on what the person is looking for. One of the main questions that I get from the first generation American Gen Z and millennials, they'll ask me like, "What are your thoughts on medication?"
Mm-hmm.
Like straight off the bat, because a lot of them are not into medication. Like that's just a no-no. Like culturally, I always joke that if my grandma could cure you with a plant, she would give you the plant before she'd give you any type of pill. And I totally get it. So if you want like a therapist who's like a little bit more holistic, you can find out what their views are on medication. If you want to know some of your therapist's like values, you can do that too. A lot of them kind of stalk me a little bit on Instagram and Facebook. And before, or I guess they stalk me before, and then they call me and they're like, "Oh, so I saw your page and I feel like you kind of align with a lot of my views."
Mm-hmm.
So if you are kind of finding a therapist, you're curious, and they have social media, check out what they post about. What does their content say about them, their values, and do they resonate with you?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So doing research, I think that is one thing about this, what's happened with the pandemic is that more people of different professions have definitely come out and done more versus just being in the community because everything went virtual. And so more people are on social media, on Instagram, the TikTok, and Facebook. I don't know if people are more so leaning towards the media platforms that are like more direct and to the point where you can just kind of like get the information really quickly. So like the Instagram and the TikTok. So I don't know if that's like where mostly people are getting most of their information, like the Gen Z. I don't know which one is like more popular for them. Um,
Yeah.
like the quick
Yeah,
and
I would say those two. Definitely Instagram and TikTok. That's where they're at. And I find that that's where they find most of their services.
mm,
Like some of the people our age who are millennials who are getting married, they'll tell me, "Oh, I found a photographer on Instagram. Oh, I found a nail lady on Instagram." Like I think that for like the millennials and Gen Zs, that's where they find their services is online.
hmm. Okay. So looking at, so if someone haven't they don't have a counselor and they're looking for one, or if they have one and they feel like they aren't really connecting with them, doing some research, looking online, and I will include a list of the different culturally competent web services that I found where they can look up counselors who match those same values. So the only one that I didn't, which I the only one that I did not get to find was one specifically for Latin culture. And so
Mhm.
I don't know if you know of any like search engines for therapists or that are like specifically for that, but I haven't found that yet.
No, so I'm like enrolled on Open Path, and I think
Okay.
maybe there you can click and filter if you want somebody who speaks Spanish, somebody who's LGBTQ plus friendly, just like Psychology Today.
Okay.
Psychology Today, I love it because you can filter. So Open Path does that. And then because I work with so many college students, I'm also enrolled with Thrive Campus. And I
Okay.
think maybe on Thrive Campus, you can do the same thing where you can filter out.
Okay. All right. That was the only one that I couldn't find. All right. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I can't think of anything. I'm so
Okay.
like chill. I'm like fly
Okay.
by the seat of my pants.
Um, I'm gonna. So, why don't you let people know where they can find you on social media, your handles?
Yes, you can find all of my Shih Tzu pictures, my advocacy stuff at MMB Healing on Instagram.
Okay. All right. And I will include all of that as well as the links that we talked about today. I'll include that in the show descriptions. And I look forward to continuing to connect with you.
Yeah, same. Thank you so much, Sophia. I loved this.
Thank you. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Alrighty, bye.
Bye.